Hi, this is Wes Simpson of LearnIPVideo.com and your host for the IP Showcase here at NAB 2022. And joining me today is Alun Fryer, who is Technical Marketing Lead at Ross Video. And he's also the chair of the Education Working Group within the AIMS organization. And Alun is going to give us an update on all the interesting things that AIMS is doing in order to promote education about some of the new media technologies and things that are going forward with that. Welcome, Alun.
Thanks, Wes. I am happy to be here. I wish that I could be with you all in person, but COVID caught up with me this past week. So you get virtual me today, and I'm going to give you a run through of
Great.
the education work group. And I'm going to introduce you to what the group's all about. I'm going to give you an update on our activities and let you know kind of what we got planned and what's coming next. I'm going to start off with a bit of a motivation of why did AIMS form the education work group to begin with. In the early days of IP media networking, there were a bunch of competing standards for transport and control, as you probably know. There were published standards and there were proprietary standards. And it was really challenging to build a working IP media solution. And a lot of the early deployments were really kind of championed by one vendor. And so you went into the single vendor solution that often involved some proprietary things, maybe some standards-based stuff, but it was kind of all over the place. It was a little bit like being in the Wild West. There was really a lot of lack of understanding about IP networking in the broadcast industry, not only by the end users and those putting the systems together, but also by the vendors themselves and the people that were building the equipment solutions. There was a lot of gaps in knowledge. So with all these different competing approaches and a lack of understanding with much of this technology, it left a lot of people really confused. So in 2015, AIMS was founded, and they set out this mission, which was to foster the adoption of one set of common, ubiquitous, standard-based protocols for the interoperability over IP in the media and entertainment industry. So they laid out a roadmap for standard-based IP media, and they worked with industry groups and vendors to promote interoperability using these standards. They also provided awareness to the industry and the users what these standards were and how to use them. So in about 2019, they extended the scope to the Pro AV space, which is now under the banner of IPMX. And the great news is that we're now seeing many, many successful installations that are running on the AIMS technology roadmap. So it's been a really great success story. And in fact, in a recent member survey, over 50% of the respondents said that the AIMS roadmap was very important or fundamental to the success of their business. So with all the success and setting out this mission, what's next? We sort of realized that a solid technology base is not useful if people don't understand it. And there are many people looking to understand IP media networking. There are many new concepts to learn. This is very different than broadcast was for the last 50 years. And we realized that there's a huge skill gap, that what people have learned in the past aren't the only skills that they need to move forward into this next generation of network media technology. In a recent AIMS member survey, we asked, what could AIMS do to help broaden the base of qualified users in the IP media networking space? And an overwhelming 94% plus of respondents said that education and training is what's needed next. So just for context here, this was a survey sent out to AIMS members, and most of those are equipment vendors and solution providers. However, we do talk to a lot of end users and we get involved with all of the projects that people are working on. And so we get to see sort of what people understand and what they don't understand and where they're craving for knowledge and training. So I think that even though this was respondents from equipment vendors and providers, it's still pretty indicative of the need in the industry for education and training in the IP media space. So we created the Education Working Group. It was started up in November 2021, so just a few months ago. We've got approximately 20 members in the group, and they have a pretty good cross section of backgrounds. You know, some come from broadcast or audio. We have some pro AV people, networking, IT, telecom, some people with cloud and WAN experience. So it's a really good cross section that lets us look at IP media technology from a lot of different angles and understand what different types of users coming and looking at this technology may be looking for. So we formed this group, and the first thing that we did is we sort of asked ourselves, well, what's our purpose in life? So we set out and created a mission statement, and I'm going to share that with you now. So first, we wanted to define what is needed to establish a foundation of shared knowledge and practical experience in the area of IP media networking. We wanted to remove barriers to entry, improve training, expand educational opportunities, and collaborate with industry organizations and others that might be developing classes, programs, and certifications. And ultimately, our goal is to rapidly expand the base of qualified professionals to meet the growing demand for IP media networking expertise. So a couple of things to note about this mission statement is that we decided that the Education Working Group's mandate wasn't to go out and create a huge curriculum and new learning materials. We decided that we are going to work with materials that are already out there, because there are actually a lot of great learning opportunities that have been created through many of the organizations, many events such as this one. So we wanted to be able to pull that information together. You know, this content, it might be articles, it might be presentations, papers, or it might include full learning courses with complete learning goals and curriculum. So some of this content is freely available, some of it may not be. But ultimately, our goal is to sort of act as a launching pad for the industry professionals to access learning opportunities, so that they can come to one place and say, you know, me as a broadcast engineer, I want to understand how SMPTE 2110 is going to affect my business. Where do I start? So that's really what the goal of the Education Working Group is to make that information accessible. So how do we get there? We kind of looked at different aspects of the problem. First, we asked ourselves, well, who is our audience? Who is seeking this information? Who is going to be interested in the AIMS technology roadmap? What do they know now? What sort of baseline can we assume that these various groups of people have? And what do they need to know? What's important for them to be successful in their industry, in their job, to work with this technology? What learning materials are already out there? And that there are lots of them. So we wanted to sort of catalog what's available. And finally, figure out, how do we fill the gap between what somebody knows, what they need to know, and what information is out there? And if there are gaps, how do we fill those gaps? How do we get those pieces of information available to different users? So starting with who is the audience, we started with, obviously we started with technical users. So these are our broadcast engineers, engineering managers, systems integrators, AV technicians. We also consider network and IT engineers, as well as product developers who may have different needs as well. In addition, we also looked at academic and researchers. Business professionals are also important. They may be looking for different type of information. So your CEO, your CFO, resellers, account managers, project managers, technical sales engineers, and so on. And finally, what do the operators of this equipment, what do they need to know? So what is a technical director or a producer, director, somebody who's a creative person who is working with this technology, what do they need to understand about it? And these needs may be very different than, say, a product developer at a company, or a systems architect who needs to know deep down how the protocols work. So we are considering all of these users, and how do we provide educational opportunities and materials that address their interests and their needs. So in terms of what material is out there, we're initially drawing upon some of the great material that we've seen presented at past AIM-sponsored events, including things like IP Oktoberfest, TechFest, and of course, the IP Showcase. And we're also reaching out with our partner organizations to coordinate our efforts and share other great learning materials that they have to offer, be it presentations, papers, and materials from other industry events. So we're amassing this big library of content to offer some of the great material that's been presented in the past. And with that, we're forming the AIMS Education Library. So this is actually live on the AIMS website right now. You can find it under resources. And what we've done is we've taken the content and that has been previously presented by event, and we're now organized it into categories, so into different topic areas of interest. We have an ongoing process where we're reviewing and refining this content to make sure that it's relevant. So, is the content relevant and up to date? For example, a presentation from 2017 on NMOS may be talking about things that have not yet happened at that date that are now well implemented and in common use. Are there duplicates? So we've seen presentations that have been given at different events that are essentially the same. So we make sure that we don't have 3 of the same presentation. Who is it targeted at, and so on. This is a quick summary of some of the topic areas that we've currently arranged things into. This is, I'll say, is a fluid list as we build the library and refine it more. These may change, but it makes it a little easier to come in and say, I'm interested in the basics of SMPTE 2110, or I'm more interested in what the Pro AV space and IPMX. What do I need to know in that space? So we made it much easier to go and navigate to find the sort of content that's maybe relevant to what you're looking to learn. So what's next? Well, as I mentioned, this library's content is still under review. We're looking at tagging the content a little bit with a bit more granularity, with different topics and technical level and audience. We're going to be growing this material as we work with our partners to make more education material available. As well, we are starting to build some introduction to these different areas, as well as some signposts to say, start here. If you are a broadcast engineer, where do I go to begin? Looking at a list of topics may still be overwhelming. So we're looking at kind of getting these introductory signposts laid out to sort of give you an idea of what do you need to know, and ultimately develop these learning pathways that can give you a path of, start here, you want to understand this topic, and then this topic, and this topic, and then that's going to get you a baseline of where you're going to need to be to work as a specific job area. We want to evolve this library into a much richer experience over time, adding the ability to search and sort and filter and create these different learning pathways. And ultimately, we want to build an approachable system that appeals to both novices and experts alike. So whether you're brand new and you want to learn the very basics and grow with that, or if you've been in the industry and working with IP for a number of years and want to understand what the latest and greatest nuances in a very focused area are. So we've, as I said, we've got some great learning materials out there that from past presentations and papers. We've got some very smart people in this industry that have been happy to share that information. And our goal really is to make that approachable, searchable, and connect the user with that knowledge base at a level that they is suitable for them. So I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a line and let me know what you'd like to see from the AIMS Education Working Group. What's important? Are you looking to learn specific things that you've had trouble finding information on by yourself? What skill sets do you find are missing in your business? We want to make sure that we're addressing those sort of needs. If you've got some great success stories that you'd like to share with other users, or war stories for that matter, I'd love to hear them all. So you can contact me at either of these email addresses, and I'd be happy to connect with you and talk about it. So thank you very much for your time, and it's been great giving you an overview of the Education Working Group today.
Alan, thank you very much for that. Really interesting. So, one of the questions that popped into my mind was, how do you see the curation taking place of this? I mean, it's going to be an ongoing process
Mhm.
where somebody's going to have to, update the card catalog, because in essence, you're building a reference library. You kind of need a librarian. How is that going to work going forward, or is that something that's still under discussion?
It's what we've done within the group is we've got a number of experts that have sort of taken we divided the content down into these different areas. So we've got a number of experts. So we have a group of people that are IPMX experts, or people that are more well versed with PTP, that are going through and continuing to look at the content we have. As new content comes in, we're kind of taking a divide and conquer approach, so that we initially started with about 200 items from the Ames library, and it was recognized right away that that was far too much for just one person to be able to curate, right? So yeah, that as we move forward and new content comes in, we'll take a divide and conquer approach on that.
So if I understand things correctly, basically this is going to end up being kind of an open reference library of videos and documents and things like that people are going to be able to access. Right?
That's right. For the most part, ultimately, we would like to also link to more structured learning courses. So there are different organizations that have built these courses. Some of them are courses that you'll pay for, and we will again signpost people to those. So if there is a training course on on various deep network IT networking approaches that may be sponsored by a networking organization, or even through a network vendor, we can point and say, this is a really good course because these are fundamentals you need to know. And then you can reach out to that vendor or that organization and arrange to take that training as well. As obviously as much material as we can post up that is free and accessible is always great. But
sure,
we're not limiting ourselves to that scope.
Yeah, sometimes you get what you pay for, but sometimes the free stuff is very good.
Yes.
Has there been any thought given to some sort of a certification process? I know that that's a big thing for equipment and software within Ames. What about approving training courses or training vendors, things like that? Has that topic come up at all?
It has come up, and we've decided that is not something that we're tackling at this time. I think we're really trying to establish a base of material that's available initially, and get that up and running and accessible. I think as that content matures, we can revisit that in the future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so I just two more questions. First one, your personal experience. What do you see as being the biggest hurdle that people need to overcome in learning about IP media systems? And maybe that's a two-part answer, because you have people coming at it from a traditional broadcast background and people coming at it from a more of a networking background. What do you see as being the biggest hurdles that people have to overcome to really understand this technology?
I think really the biggest problem I've seen is people don't know what they don't know. It's a big mystery. So if you're I'll say an old school broadcast engineer and worked with transmitters all your life, this IP thing is really something you may not have been exposed to, and it just may seem like a big mystery. So being able to provide that signpost and that pathway to say, okay, letting them know, here's what you need to understand,
Hmm.
to make them more comfortable that, okay, yes, I can adapt into the evolution of this technology. And similarly, we're seeing many people coming from the IT side that are now being asked to work in broadcast and manage broadcast facilities. Um, they don't know what that really means. Again, it's this big black box.
Hmm.
So, kind of shining a light on that to let them understand it doesn't have to be big and scary.
And so that makes perfect sense with me. Very much resonates with my experience. Training is that people are thirsty for knowledge, but they're also a little bit intimidated, and sometimes they're afraid to ask
Hmm.
questions. So I think this
Yeah,
sounds like a really big improvement, really big jump forward. Um,
yeah.
so the last thing just wanted to touch on briefly, if somebody has material that they want to contribute to this, how do they do that? And how do you decide what to include and not include? And in particular, what I'm concerned about are presentations that end up being self-serving, or pushing a particular provider's point of view or supplier's point of view.
Mhm.
How do you go about weeding out the obvious commercial ones, and but still bringing in content from wherever, good content from wherever originates.
That is a topic that we're still having some discussion on within the group. You know, I feel, and the feeling of the group is that we don't want to exclude good content, even if it is from a point of view of, say a particular equipment vendor or solution
Hmm.
provider, because it may still be relevant. For example, there may be a really great presentation on here's how to diagnose PTP using this particular piece of equipment. And this is really great information to have, because you may not, this may be a skill that's useful to you.
Hmm.
And, what we would are looking to do is just simply to make these things clear that these are very much solution or provider dependent presentations, so that you know ultimately we're not endorsing
Hmm.
one supplier over another.
Kind of a warning label, so to speak.
Exactly. I mean, certainly there is consideration that there may be presentations that are completely, they don't offer additional value beyond being a sales pitch.
Hmm.
And we've not yet developed a strict set of criteria on where things are classified yet. So that's work that's still to be done.
Yeah, yeah, obviously, and that's always going to be a judgment call and a shifting line and things
Hmm.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Could you pop back to your previous slide just so people could see the contact info again?
absolutely.
Okay. And again, if somebody wants to contribute something, that's sitting here in the audience, would you be a good place to start? Just send you an email or send
Yeah,
a.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
please do.
All right. That'd be great. Well, thank you very much, Alan. Alan Fryer is a technical marketing lead at Ross Video, and he's also the chair of the education working group within Ames. And really want to thank you for your presentation today, and hope you recover soon from your inability to travel, and we get to see you again at a live and in person at an event coming up soon.
I am looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Wes, and thank you everybody for your attention today.